back down here with the Petty brothers, Richie, Mark, and Timmy. We got something a little different for you today. We've been trying to get our dad, when he was alive, to sit down with him and record some of his old stories. But he would always tell us, I done lived it, I done been through it, I ain't got to redo it. So we never did get to sit down with him, and now he's gone. We were going through some old stuff, and kind of a pleasant surprise, we come across some audio tapes that he put together 30 years ago. And he's talking about the first races he experienced and just going and doing things. And we're going to share with you with this audio. We're going to try to, we hope you enjoy it, because we enjoy listening to it, I think. I mean, it's something special to us because he wouldn't sit down with us. I guess he was, like he said, he done lived it, and he didn't want
Well, everybody's always talking about how quiet Daddy was.
Right.
And if you look through, you can't find many interviews on him and whatnot, and this is probably one of the longest interviews. It's voices from the past.
So special guest today is Maurice Petty.
Yeah, that's the best we can do.
In his own words. And so,
well, and going back to some of those stories, I mean, just listening to your audio on it, we've heard some of those stories, but it's kind of different, to hearing it, and it's chilling to us, for his voice to be talking to us.
Yep.
From that nature.
So those of you that want to know a little bit about the Chief and his memories, here they are, right?
And he also attended some of the first NASCAR races.
Yes, the very first one, the very first NASCAR Cup race.
Was at Charlotte, right?
Yeah, him and Richard,
wow,
Elizabeth, and Lee was in it naturally. But if you enjoy
so
this,
we always think of grandfather,
yeah.
But Daddy was actually one of the pioneers that went and done. He was just a kid, obviously, in '49, but. Anyway.
So if you enjoy this video, let us know in the comments. And we've got more. We've got grandmother and grandfather talking on this thing too, and our mother. So if you enjoy this, let us know, and we'll do some more.
Tell your friends.
Like this.
Make sure you like and subscribe.
So enjoy.
Fourth grade. I remember the first race was like an old modified that Lee and Julie had, and I remember going to that race. I think it was somewhere up, it was like in the mountains, somewhere like up in, I don't know, it was in North Carolina or in Virginia, but you went and it was an old dirt track, and they hauled it up there on an old flatbed truck, and they didn't have no grandstand, and it was just down in between two mountains, and there was trees all around it, and like everybody parked their old cars up around, all up in the hillside, and you look down on that. And that's about all I remember there. I don't even know how to run or where it finished. Next thing, I guess it's still in '49 there. The next race, I remember they got this old Buick. I don't know whose it was. I think it belonged to an old guy in Greensboro. They borrowed it. Him and Julie and them was messing with it, and they wanted to race. So it was in Charlotte at the old dirt track, mile dirt track. I remember going over there. The only thing I remember is sitting in the grandstand, and there's cars and people everywhere, and really wasn't sitting so much in the grandstand, was running all over the grandstand. And anyway, they raced it. And the only biggest thing I can remember about that is when they was running, and really at that age, you wasn't really keeping up with who was running where. But anyway, going into number 3 turnover, Lee wrecked, and the best thing I can remember about that is that they had to take 2 records, one in the front and one in the rear, and they picked that thing up and hauled it off the track, and that's about all I can remember in '49. It was probably the toughest thing I believe I've ever done in my life. Trying to remember back, say, 36 years ago. I mean, that's when I was 10. I'm 46 now, going on 37. I'm 47. Bring up a lot of blank memories. I remember it was either the latter part of 49 or 50 going to the race. It was in Hillsboro, North Carolina. And I know Lee had an old 49. It was a 49 black Plymouth, and they drove it there. I know when he got there, he taped up the headlights. Or he took them out or he taped them up, and he run the race. And I can remember being concerned or worried about if something happened to the car, how we was going to get home that night. Back in them early days, they didn't have no roll bars or nothing in them. They had some seat belts. That's about all they had. And I can remember them getting them coops and playing with the coops and back what you call an op runner, but on a coop, a wooden one, and they take a hammer and a chisel and slice a little hole in there, and they roll the window down. And I remember going to like the hardware store and getting an old leather dog collar, and they would run that through that slice and back around through the door, and then they would just that's how they would hold the door shut. Our first involvement in racing was more in racing of little old, what we call soapbox derbies or wagons that we would build and race over behind the house. So at that time we lived over on what's called a Red Cross Road, and when I was like 10, 11 years old, and I was like in the 4th, 5th grade, and Lee had a little shop down there behind the house that we would get us some old wheels, and we'd go down there and build us up with, like I say, an old wagon that resembled a soapbox derby, so to speak. And then there behind the house, over on a hill, we went over there and built us on the biggest hill we had. We would ride down it, and we finally had 1 or 2, 3 wagons. All these boys on the weekends, like on Sundays, would go over and push it down the hill and see who get down the hill first. And most time it was, at the most, we had 3 wagons. Most time it was 2, and we went down through there and we'd haul dirt in there and make us a bank. But we'd get up the top, and two of us would probably race down. That was probably my first involvement in racing. And after we graduated from what you call those soapbox derbies, we run down the hills. We raced bicycles, and we up there above the house, close to an old bicycle barn, and we built us a track, and we would ride bicycles and race them, and all the neighborhood kids would come, and sometimes we'd have much as 4, 5, 6 people on bicycles, and we'd run all on Sunday evenings. And that was my first involvement of working on anything that was racy. Lee was, him and Julie and them, when they had an old car, and they was working out of Julie's garage as far as racing. And then he would work on an old car, an old place up at Bales and Truett where they would build the cars and race out of. I was working on the race cars back in them days. I physically did not work on the race cars. I know that when we was going to school and was too young to work on them, didn't know nothing about them, but we were learning what racing was all about. And when I get to go to races was like in the summer when we was out of school, they run like 50 and 60 races. They run all up in New York and all up in there. And then when school was out, and just quick as school was out, we'd all pack up all our clothes, and whenever Lee went to race, me and Richard and Mom and Dad, we would all get in the car and go. 1951, Mom and Dad bought my grandparents' old house back here in Level Cross. And that was Mom and Dad's parents. And that was the house that me and Richard was born in. Down behind that house was an old reaper shed where they kept an old tractors and farm tools and stuff in. It had old tin roof and 5 cedar poles holding it up, and had a dirt floor. And at that time, I guess that was the starting of petty enterprise, because the dirt floor turned into a cement floor, which that cement floor was put down by me and Richard, and we mixed the cement out of a wheelbarrow and poured that portion of the floor.